how does it feel 10 years later? I don't think if you had talked to me 10 years ago at 26 years old, I would have believed you. I would have probably been like, you're cute. I love a 401k. I love financial security. I don't think I was in that mindset yet. And so it's been also really humbling to be able to have survived. I recently was on my blog deleting old blog posts from companies that no longer are in existence. And there was
Wow.
a and I was like, oh my God, I kind of had survivor's guilt there. I'm like, we're still here. We're still doing it.
Welcome to the Limitless Podcast, the show where women entrepreneurs become radically aware of their limiting beliefs, learn to value their worth, generate wealth, and to thrive as a magnetic brand leader. I'm your host, Jamie Ratermann, a six-figure holistic business coach. I've helped over 100 rebellious entrepreneurs master marketing, embody leadership, and say fuck it to the hustle. Let's dive in. Hello, lovelies. Welcome to another episode of the Limitless Podcast. I am so excited for the fact that we are welcoming back somebody who was let's just call her a kindred spirit. I met her over a phone call through business, and then it turned into a friendship. And then we just realized that we're two peas in a pod, which makes this even more exciting. I'm welcoming Emily Merrell, the super connector, my first business coach, which was years ago now. It feels insane. Back on the podcast. But the reason why I wanted to bring her on is that I recently got to have the pleasure of interviewing her in front of 30 New York entrepreneurs, or just in general, people who are networking, meeting with each other during a Second Degree Society event. So I am her New York City ambassador, aka I host in-person events under the Second Degree Society umbrella once a month. So you get to actually in real life meet these people, but also to, I just love why I get to be a part of what Emily's about, which is truly connecting with others, which you all know. But Emily, I'm so excited to have you and to continue this amazing conversation we had on the pod. Welcome back.
Oh, well, thank you for that beautiful and wonderful introduction. And I love that you always remember your first. We're not forgotten.
You
As
were
you
my
grow,
first. You
you're
you
first.
you you were my first pop. You popped my cherry, hon.
I did. I thought about using that in my marketing, like you'll always remember your first. And I thought the right person will love it. Other people will walk away screaming, run away
I
screaming,
mean,
probably.
I feel like that's you. Let's put that in your messaging. Let's deter the people that think that's weird, because that's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. My next social media post will be like, you'll always remember your first. But it is so funny. I remember, I felt like I was the badger to you. I was like, Jamie, you should be an entrepreneur. Jamie, you need to do this on your own. Jamie. I was like haunting your dreams until you did
I was
it.
like, oh, consulting's great. It's great. And then like, why are you getting a health coach certification? Because I like it, and I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. Like, be a coach, be a coach. I'm like, oh, all right. I like that. And then I can see how it all kind of fell into place, which is lovely. But
And
Emily,
then
tell us what you're up to now. Tell us about what is Emily Merrill, CEO and mom. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Sometimes I forget I'm a mom, or I'll like forget to introduce myself as a mom. And I had a friend who, whenever she introduced herself, she would like not mention she was a mom. And I'd be like, she's a mom, guys. She's like, yeah, that's not like my identity. And so I understand it now being a mom. I'm like, oh yeah, how do you bake that into your entrepreneurial identity? Which it is. But hi guys, I now live in Denver, Colorado, which I think I did earlier on the pod too, but now we really live here. It's been 2 years. And this is fun fact, Jamie, the longest I've lived in one apartment or place or home since I left New York City. So my husband Greg and I have moved every single year we have been together, which I do not recommend unless you want a divorce, because it's really, really a fun way to challenge a relationship. So this has been fun to be here for 2 years. As Jamie said, I am a business coach for early stage entrepreneurs. I am really passionate about helping people just do the dang thing, stop talking about it, stop ruminating about it, and just do it. And I think one of my special sauces is being able to make sense of all of the swirling thoughts and fears in your head and create a clear game path forward on how are we going to bring this little tickle inside of me to life. Um, I'm also a fellow Gemini with Miss Jamie here. So I am known for being called lovingly 20 questions. I think I have a very frustrating for some, inspiring to other ways, to ask a lot of questions and really to get to know a person in a deep way. And as she also mentioned, I am the founder of Second Degree Society. And I am just so passionate about making the world a smaller and more connected place through intentional connections and community. So I'm so grateful to have people like Jamie who are continuing the representation and bringing it forth in New York City with, a gajillion events going on and really helping me shine bright while I'm not there.
Yes, I mean, slowly, even though you're saying you like Denver, whatever, it's fine. We're each time I'm like, we're slowly going to pull you back to the best coast, aka the East Coast. Well, we'll divulge that another day. But what was so lovely about being able to interview you in front of these amazing women the other day was that we are celebrating something. We are celebrating Emily being 10 years in business. Now, I feel really
10
cool
years
about
old.
7, but 10 is such a milestone. What does it feel like to be like running your own thing for 10 years now?
It feels insane because when I started this business, it was not a business, it was a side hustle. And I wouldn't even have used the word side hustle because it was just a passion project, something that I found was really easy to do and something I really enjoyed doing it. So if it was easy, it couldn't be a job, right? Like it couldn't be something that I monetized. I felt so guilty of that. So, y'all, when I started this, I was 26. I was working in high luxury fashion. I had the dream job. I'm putting in quotes there if you're watching this on YouTube. And I just felt like I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, even though I was in this career trajectory. And so truly my side hustle or passion project saved me and introduced me to this world of entrepreneurship and this world of people and women specifically doing really badass things. And so I'm so grateful that my community was the one who really encouraged me to become an entrepreneur and put my back into it in terms of like taking this full circle. So to answer the question, how does it feel 10 years later? I don't think if you had talked to me 10 years ago at 26 years old, I would have believed you. I would have probably been like, you're cute. I love a 401k. I love financial security. I don't think I was in that mindset yet. And so it's been also really humbling to be able to have survived. I recently was on my blog deleting old blog posts from companies that no longer are in existence. And there was
Wow.
a and I was like, oh my God, I kind of had survivor's guilt there. I'm like, we're still here. We're still doing it.
Oh, what I love about that too, though, is first, let's just talk about like, I think there's a sense of everyone when we're talking about running your own business that a pervasive idea online is that every person who's decided this, they've always wanted to be a business owner. They've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. They always wanted these things. And you know this about me, is that I kind of fell back into it. I remember perfectly when I was still in a corporate situation at lunch with a friend, and I was like talking to her about my frustrations of just like working my tail off and just like not making enough money and not feeling like I was being valued, all of the things. And she just stared at me. She goes, "You're really smart. Like you're really good at this stuff. Like I feel like you should like freelance or like run your own thing." And I remember just like laughing. It was over coffee. It was over coffee at Cologne. I remember exactly where it was, like laughing into my coffee cup, going like, "You're you're nuts, like running my own thing." So I think one thing I love about what you were saying, there's many things, but one thing I love about what you were saying is that like this doesn't have to like this is a path that we get to choose. It's not this like I woke up and was born to be an entrepreneur. So like you talking about like, yeah, I didn't really realize this was going to be it, but I followed. Like, what made you decide, okay, like even though I didn't think that I really love a 401k, I really love these things. Like do you remember that initial spark that was like, all right, maybe I can put all my weight behind this and make this into a whole career?
There were three sparks. One, both my parents were entrepreneurs growing up. I don't know if they were successful, and now as an adult having these conversations, I'm like, cool. So how did we survive? Um, I'm sorry, how much were you paying yourself? Oh, how much did your business bring in? And there's a little bit more recognition, gratefulness, but also realizing that my parents, I thought they knew what they were doing, had no idea what they were doing. Sorry, guys. And then second, every time I was in a corporate job and I switched, I worked in 4 different companies in a short period of time. I was a jumper and I was kept feeling really itchy. And I felt like everyone took themselves so seriously. And I truly felt like I was undercover, like I had to do this undercover to like report back to this other world, but I didn't know what the other world was. So like I remember at one of my jobs, I worked at Ralph Lauren and the printer forgot to put the date, or the designer forgot to put like the date and time on the printed. We got things professionally framed for every single store when we had signage. Like this is the stupidest thing in hindsight to think about, where I wasn't questioning, like, should we just print it out, get a frame that we could do it ourselves rather than taking it to a framer to pay $90 to put it in a professional frame. And I had to go and pick it up and then take it to get the printed version, then take it to a professional framer. And I was like dying laughing. This was just, but I was laughing while also super bought into this like stress of doing this really important task. And then this version of me that pulled back and could see it from above was like, what the F are you doing? Like, this is so stupid. And we're so like making this to be the end of the world situation.
Oh my gosh.
And in fashion too, everything was the end of the world. And
Oh,
you were the
oh my God.
most, like if you were the star of the show kind of thing of the end of the world. So that was number two. And then the third thing was I had what I like to call, if you've read the E-Myth Revisited, this entrepreneurial seizure, where in 2015, my friend Tracy, who I was telling you about earlier, she was like, Emily, you need a website. And I had so much resistance. I was like, I have this newsletter. I'm on MailChimp now. Things are good. Do you remember MailChimp was called MailChimp? Yeah.
Yeah.
MailChimp, MailChimp. I felt sophisticated in having like a newsletter CRM system. And she built me a website as a gift and she presented it to me. And she's like, you can now host your events and you can like post when they are happening on a website. And I started feeling so much imposter syndrome because I need to put stuff on the website. Like that means I should probably do a blog. So I started interviewing my incredible friends. And I think one of my first interviews was actually with Carolyn, and I posted it onto Facebook. And a friend from college reached out on Facebook Messenger and was like, Emily, I've been seeing what you're doing on Instagram, like my 150 followers I had at the time. I loved this blog post. I would love to bring what you're doing to Chicago. Do you have any interest in expanding or teaching me how to do it so I can launch it in Chicago? And that was the first moment where like all of those sparks kind of just ignited into fireworks. And I realized, holy crap, like this isn't just a New York problem. This is something I could bring and expand and teach and grow and scale across the country. And that's when the 401k didn't matter. That's when the money from this corporate job didn't matter. That's when like I started really kind of getting turned on by the idea of starting my own business.
I feel like what I hear in that story is like the power of like people like, doubling down and telling you that this is a really cool idea. Like, so the idea of like putting it out there, people knowing about it, like getting in that interview was, while you thought it was cool, like it took them like allowing yourself to be seen and trying something new helped you to kind of go like, oh, this is a thing. Like this is part of it. So like I think part of like the learning within that is like, yes, it's important to set your goals and you don't have to share it with everybody all the time, but like allowing your passions just to come through, to share it, let's just see what happens when you kind of allow yourself to be seen. I think I love that part, but I think maybe you didn't say it, but based off of your experience in fashion and all of the things, and we could talk about the egos in the fashion
Yeah.
industry and how they're just, it could be a whole separate episode. But the idea of, sometimes you're working within an organization or you're working with somebody and going, I would never do it this way. Like I would never do it this way. And I'm not in for doing this for the rest of my life. And that was a huge part of like, even too, for me, like I left a job looking for another corporate job. And then I walked into another corporate interview and I was like, oh, I'm about to have the same experience here. And I'm not gonna keep doing this. Like that was like that like little like moment of like, maybe that's what it is. So I think within your story, it was like having these other people go like, what you've got going is something that's needed, which is lovely. And then also to like this belief in yourself going like, I could do this better. Like, or I could do this in a way that's at the very least, going to make me happier.
And 1,000%. And at the last corporate job I was at, I was struggling with my boss. I was taking my roommate's Adderall in the morning because I felt like I was so disorganized. And she gave it to me, guys. I didn't steal it. I was getting up so early. Like I felt like I was falling short on so many different ways at this corporate job. And so my role in corporate was special events and marketing. And so essentially, to synthesize that down, I was making rich people buy expensive clothes, and I was a failure when someone didn't, like if I okayed an organization and they came in and they didn't spend a lot of money. And then I would get reamed at from my boss, like, well, why did you agree to that organization? Like, do. And so one of the learnings that I had, or the realizations I had with my organization, is not all stores operate on that ROI positioning, and what all stores want are new customers. They want new clients, new customer acquisition, and what I can provide them is a hand-delivered clienteling list. So I was able to find the stores that all they wanted were their ideal clients given to them on a silver platter at a very turnkey experience without spending like $2,500, $5,000 on catering, and that expectation that they're going to drop 10K in a sip and shop. So I was able to like reimagine what that looked like with the learnings that I had being in corporate, and the door opening experience of being in corporate and having some really impressive brands on my resume, like made me more sellable and easier for other people to say yes to me bringing in this like random group of women. But yes, to your point, the validation, that external validation, especially from someone who had never participated in an event before, had just seen it by lurking, like that meant so much into my bone. And it still does to this day. There are moments that I'm like, that's it. We should go look for that corporate job again. And I'll get an email that's like, I don't know if you remember me, but at your co-ed event in 2017, you matched me with my now husband. I'm like, what?
Write that as a testimonial. You didn't realize you were a matchmaker, but hell, let's take
Yeah,
it. Let's take
Sex
it.
Degree Society. It's coming soon.
Oh my goodness. Sex degree society. I like it. I
I
like it.
do own that though. So
What's beautiful about all of this is that in general, what I think part of what you've done is community and connection, like is what you build, what you're giving to others. But a lot of what your own business story is about this connection, this community, like that, it's just kind of boiled into like what you do. But I think there's a sense of like, you're 10 years in, and 4 years ago, this thing called COVID happened, and you pivoted, you made these adjustments, you made these changes. I think there's a question in here going, what has allowed you to keep going? Like even when like, the bottom fell out, and you ran, if I remember correctly, you ran like 2 live events a week prior to
oh,
COVID.
yeah. Oh,
And that was like
one
live, meaning in person, like running like
a week.
it felt like it was 2. Maybe I'm way off, but either way.
Yeah.
But and you were doing that in LA and
New
Chicago,
York.
in New York, like at least like, I remember you doing it all these different places, and then everything closed down. You were able to pivot and do this virtually. You're handling it, but I think there like the underlying piece of this is like what allowed you to go, nope, we're going to keep going. Or even maybe there were some months in your coaching business that didn't feel 100% like, oh, this is going to be viable for me long term, and you go like, you know what, I'm going to keep going. Like what do you feel it has been, let's
Yeah.
say let's say mindset stuff, let's say strategies that just have allowed you to keep going?
And this might be a broken way to think about things, but I do believe that life is a game, and there's different attitudes in which you play the game. And so I've always kind of had this like childlike wonder in application of this game called life. Hence why I sucked at fashion, because I'd be laughing as we were doing this like end of end of the world thing that needed to be done. And so 2019 was a real dumpster fire for me. For those that know, For those that don't know, basically, long story as short as possible, we had an apartment fire where we lost pretty much all of our stuff. My husband was commuting to Palo Alto at the time. We were living in San Francisco. So everything was tasked on me. So I had to find us a new apartment. I had to order us new food, new stuff, new clothing, new furniture. I had to handle all of the like insurance claims because he had just started this new corporate job a week before. So a lot of this stuff, because I had the flexibility of being an entrepreneur, fell on me, which meant that my business suffered tremendously. Like it was definitely one of the crappiest years I've ever had of business. My confidence was definitely floundering. My emotions were all over the place. So then fast forward later in the year, we got married. So I always say that 2019, while it was a dumpster fire year, it was filled with like the most love and light I've ever experienced. We got married. We were evacuated 30 minutes before the ceremony because of more fires. It was literally a dumpster fire year. It was in Sonoma County where there was a bunch of Kincaid fires happening. So we were evacuated, and one of my best girlfriends, her mom has a house in St. Helena and rescued us. And in addition to that, my stepdad unfortunately had choked on a piece of steak that same week and was in a coma and ultimately passed away while we were at the airport waiting for our honeymoon. So it's like you think that you are hit with one thing, and then you're like hit with another thing, and then you're hit with a freaking another thing, and then you're just like, should I just go and get hit by a bus at this point? Because it feels like it's not ending. And then on the business front of things, I was hit with a cease and desist letter for the 6 Degrees Society. So we entered into a licensing agreement for.
Okay, so pause really quickly. So currently, Emily is running a business called the Degree Society, but the original name was the 6 Degree Society. So like
Yeah.
this, essentially what you're talking about is that there was another company trying to use the name as well. Go ahead.
Totally. And they had done the trademark and everything, and they had every right to protect their trademark. So I was like, guys, I just moved into this new apartment. We had a fire. They're like, that sucks. So you owe us money or you have to stop with the name. So we entered at that point in time, I entered into a licensing agreement because it made more sense to me than to figure out what the heck do I want to call this new brand and so on and so forth. So to answer your question, I'm a very wordy person. Is fast forward 2020 happens. I was out of the gates like this is going to be the best year. I have a ton of debt now because not only did I plan a wedding, was I not bringing in that much income, I was also paying licensing fees. Like there was just so much more anticipated than I had thought. And COVID, I had just come from Alt Summit of 2020 and hosted an event in LA. And right before the event, the store was like, you can't serve food at this event, this COVID thing, or corporate teams telling no food.
Right.
And I'm pushing back, Jamie. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, we need to serve food. This is unacceptable. I was such a bitch that I probably won't ever work with them again. I'm positive they don't like
Out
me.
of embarrassment or okay. What you're
Both,
saying. Okay.
both,
Yeah,
absolutely.
both sides.
Yeah. And so fast forward, I got back to San Francisco that Thursday. We locked down Friday. And it was crazy because I cried for about 45 minutes and I was like, Greg, what are we going to do? I have all of these venues that are canceling. I had these amazing partnerships lined up. Like I was going to do a 3-part series with Dyson's in their store, paid, like just all of these amazing
Wow.
up and up things. And people are pulling out and speakers are rescheduling and venues are saying they're closing their doors. And I was so grateful. I'd been coaching on Zoom. And so I decided, like, I wonder if I put something out there on Zoom, if people actually come. And so I did pretty soon afterwards, maybe like the next week or so. And people showed up. I didn't know about breakout rooms. I still did the connections, but I had people like type their emails or their phone numbers and they'd call each other and I'd mute them.
Those early days. I remember
Yeah.
that.
And then I found out about breakout rooms. And then I was at home and I had nothing to do. So I was hosting an event a day. I started a podcast. I always wanted to do a group program, but was chicken shit to do one. So I decided to do a mastermind. So I launched a mastermind. And 2020 ended up being, I think, still to the record, like the best year I've ever had in terms of focus, in terms of intentionality, in terms of like really fostering connection. And I think that 2020, I was able to like swallow the pill of not traveling or whatnot because 2019 was still something I was reeling from and digesting. So when people were like, this is, and fortunately, no one was sick and no one was like, we had such privilege. We were working from home in San Francisco.
Of course.
We,
Yeah, of course.
so, anywho, that changed me and my business model tremendously. And I
So
think it
clearly
really,
2019 and 2020 were like foundational, like growth years and like personal, seems like more personal than like personal first, let's say, and business, and then business came second for you.
and then business came second. And I think it made me also realize where I like to spend my energy. So to bring it back to what you said, I was hosting one event a week in select markets in person, and I would never complain. I would be like, "Well, whatever, this is no big deal." And of course, you schlep with 12 wine bottles on the subway, or you do what you do. And virtual really took this effort off of me. Like they started on time, they ended on time. I didn't have to find a venue. And I realized a lot of the efforts and a lot of the focus I was putting in my business was in places that weren't necessarily moving the needle.
Yeah.
So that was a big aha from COVID was like, okay, if I'm putting all my energy on trying to find like free wine that's $64, or I could be focusing on like nurturing someone who signs to coach with me, one thing is has more value than another. So
I feel like what I
um
hear and everything you're saying, and this is just a trait of yours that I've absolutely seen, is that you're kind of not one to kind of wallow. You're not one to wallow, commiserate. Like you might be frustrated. Let's not like it's not like you don't feel negative troubles or emotions or any of those things, but you're not one to wallow and go like, I don't want to do anything about it, or I'm gonna just like woe is me. Like if anyone would ever be like, Emily Merrell plays the victim, I'd be like, you don't fucking know her. You don't know her. So I think there's a sense of like your ability to I think like I love the idea of making it a game and that the what's fun about this is that making it a game, nothing has true weight. It's just a game. Like it's like nothing has this like, oh, it means something about me. I'm no good or whatever it's going to be. Like making this feel like a game is it allows it to be like, okay, I lost this match. Let me try
mhm,
the next match. So it doesn't have to feel this way. And what's kind of interesting is that I've been diving deeper into this entrepreneur named Daniel Priestley, and he talks about how whenever you're deciding what kind of business you want, like if it's going to have longevity, you got to go like when you were a kid, did you find that like you were like, oh, I'm a powerful person. Oh, I'm enjoying this. And I'm willing to bet that Emily did this probably during a game of Monopoly or something, because if I ever am like, hey, is there any games or board games that you would suggest? She like drops me like five new ones that I've never heard of in my life. And like you're like it's baked into your being that like you like to play games. Like you like to have like in general, that's a part of like what you do. So I think there's a sense of I have a feeling that this kind of mentality that runs within you is absolutely from something from when you were a kid. So that's one thing I'm hearing in this story. I want to ask, do you have fire at all in your birth chart? Like just like since there was so much fire in that 2019 year.
ooh, good question. I'm a lot of air. I'm a Gemini with my rising sign is Taurus, which I don't think is fire.
No, because Aries is
Okay.
fire. I think Taurus is
I
earth.
thought I was Aries, but then I realized I had
I don't know
my
this well enough. We'll have to ask
yeah.
our
Well, we'll
astrologer
ask
people.
our
But whatever you're
astrologer.
like, if like all of this like power of yours got born through not one but two fires, like this idea.
I have no tattoos, but I considered for a while. I was like, do I get a flame on my body just to remind me? And my husband, who's like a good dad, was like, why don't you think about it for a year? If you still want it, you can get it. And I didn't
Or you
really
could
care.
do it at a ephemeral too, the ones that like go
Oh
around.
yeah. Yeah, that seems more. I almost got a second piercing for the last month and I chickened out every time. I was like, I don't know. That feels like a lot of commitment to keep going. But the wallowing thing, it's so true. I actually said this to Greg the other day. I was like, you know what? I don't think I complain very often. Like I don't like talking shit about people and I don't like complaining. Both those feelings make me feel really gross. I do it. Don't get me wrong. I've done both of those things, but it makes me feel really gross about myself afterwards. So it's not a feeling I like to do. I don't like to complain. The only time I'll complain is typically if it impacts someone else that I'm with. So
Mhm.
like if the service is crappy or if where did I complain? Oh, when we I was at this hotel for this conference. I didn't complain, but a friend complained. And we were at the gym and they had 5 pound weights and then 25 pound weights.
Oh.
Like, you should probably
Maybe a
like
little more. Yeah.
yeah,
A few other
read
options. There's
read
some
the
weights in
room.
between there.
Yeah, stuff like that. But no, I appreciate you saying that. And wallowing's not something. And I give myself a good cry like once a month. It's like I've watched PS I Love You or something, and I just lose my shit and I'm
I haven't
hysterically
seen Yes, I
crying.
Love You in forever. Hillary Swank, where are you? I've missed it. I haven't even thought of her in so long, but I feel like what's my cry? Yeah, P.S. I Love You would be a good crying movie, though. It would be.
5 minutes in, you're like, ah. Oh, Pearl Harbor, that's a good one if you want a good cry. That one always got me for some reason. Josh Hartnett.
Mhm. I'm
Yeah.
so happy he was an Oppenheimer. Like I hadn't seen him in forever, and he was an Oppenheimer.
Well, it like confirmed that he was still alive, and that meant a lot to me. I was like, oh, thank God. I was concerned about you.
There's a there's a red carpet interview of him talking about how he's in love with his British wife. So I'll send that too, just so you know that he's like fully alive. I was like, oh, okay, Joshy. I will never call anyone Joshy in real life. So sorry. I don't know why I said that.
He was between him and Leonardo DiCaprio, like I think it was the height of hormones and height of crushes. Like I would sit in my bed as a 10-year-old sketching Leonardo DiCaprio. And I'll send you a sketch. I have a beautiful sketch of him with a swan around his neck. It was a real picture. I didn't like come up with it.
Of course, of course.
Oh yeah, I was a fanatic. And I don't think I've ever liked someone since even my husband. Like I don't think I've crushed as hard as I crushed on those two men
Okay,
at that
we're gonna send this to both of them and see if
point.
you can have that relationship in its own way.
Now, now,
A
now
good
I'm
cry, releasing
yeah,
emotions.
I know.
That's what we're talking about. Your crush is all of the things. But I think this plays into this idea of this is why you're still here 10 years later. Like a lot of what you shared would have crushed other people or could crush somebody. And you
Mhm.
were talking about at the beginning about how some businesses still aren't around. And I think that even too in 2020, I witnessed like a boom. Like I had been in business for, I think that would have been 2 years at that point. But I just saw people starting businesses in 2020. Like everyone was like, oh, this is an opportunity. And like I would definitely say 2020 was a good year financially for me, just as much as any other year. But still, like I saw a boom because people were ready to invest. They were trying to find their own path in this new weird world. And then now we're 4 years later, and I can say that, like, yeah, I would bet that there's like a 30-40% of those people like are no longer in business. And it doesn't mean anything about them, but it does beg to the question, like, you know, why do you think that sometimes entrepreneurs like can't have the longevity in their
Can't
business
hack it.
like you've been able to accomplish?
I think back to what you said about gaming, like a gamification. So I was just working on my reels for later this month. Some of the things that I've done differently is I've had no shame of taking other jobs while building this job.
Mm,
And I think that should be talked about more. So, like when I first decided on entrepreneurship, that didn't mean I was putting all of my eggs into entrepreneurship. So, I told everyone and their mom what I was doing. And that meant that I was babysitting in the morning. I was babysitting on Friday nights and on Saturday nights. I was renting out my room so I could make money and not have to have that expense, and be a lot more lean in my business. I also got hired to do event consulting. So I planned events. One of my bless, Lauren Danziger, she hired me from the meatpacking district to plan Google's neighborhood night out in the meatpacking. So I had like 3-month contracts there. And so I would always like take on other things I would consult or like bring on whatever. I don't know. I had the confidence also of like a white man at that point in my life where I was just really like saying yes to everything and saying that I had a can-do attitude. Oh, you need
even too,
this?
the part of it is like allowing money to come from multiple places, not saying it has to only come through this lane. And I think just using that first example as an example, like I will be in the middle of a client conversation and we're talking about money, and I go, "What if you made money, and it wasn't from this very product. And it's not that don't want them to sell their things. It's just going like, open your possibility that you might have something like sitting in your inbox of a partnership that turns into like Google, that had to be something that boosted your business after the fact, like that had to be helpful in its own way, even to like selling your thing, selling like things you don't use anymore, like small, like all these
Totally.
other ways. Is that I think when you are becoming an entrepreneur, it's an adaptation game.
Hmm.
It's also where you got to open your mind and open your heart to possibility. I think that's part of it for sure.
And oh, first off, I was like, should I be a surrogate? Should I sell my eggs? How much is an organ worth? There were some dark times that I've thought about Foot Finder many times. I'm like, would anyone want to watch my OnlyFans? Like, there are things I have thought about. And I have to say the thing that's been fascinating being in partnership and being married, I've been with my husband now for 8 years next week. And I think there's this scrappiness that still lives within me. Like, we own our house now, and I look at him weekly and I'm like, let's Airbnb it and let's go to Mexico for 3 months. And then we have our mortgage paid for like multiple months. We're saving and then we're building wealth. And I still have that like scrappy fire, and he loves routine and comfort and roots
Oh
and
yeah,
whatnot.
I
So
can
the
see.
idea of that is like, he's like hard
We've
pass.
married similar men for sure. Fred loves good routine, and I'm like, let's change it up completely. Let's just throw it all to the wind.
Yeah, I was like, let's live on a boat. He's like, what's the Wi-Fi on a boat? I'm like, oh, gosh darn it. Anywho, so yeah, things like that. But even to this day, like I still consult. I still, and I think that done with a lens of, it's a lens of, will this also move my business forward? So, for example, I always love to do my Denison example. I consult at Denison and I have been for now about 2.5 years. But I started off as a volunteer planning a summit for them that I would have happily continued still being a volunteer for. And they just realized that I was bossier and could help streamline things a bit more. And so they offered me like a bigger opportunity.
Can we just say
So
you were probably organized and had it, and you were able to make it seamless? I don't think
yeah,
it means that you were bossy.
exactly, exactly. But bringing that on, and so what has that unlocked? It's an entrepreneurial summit. So I've now have mentors who graduated from the class of 1990, who are men who I never would have met or connected with, and helped me and move the needle forward. It has unlocked opportunities with other female partnerships, speakers, organizations. The one coming up next month is um, all for women at all stages of their lives. So it's a recruitment opportunity for me and brand awareness opportunity. So I think if you are at that place of like fear of money, think like, can you find something that is a door opener and or is also aligned with your business in some way, from ROI, brand awareness, client acquisition, or just expansion in general.
I love that. So I think the biggest things, like I'm just like learning from what you're sharing, is that again, boiled into all of this is connection. Like that, like, I think if there's a message to be said, is that like M has never done this alone, like in different senses. Like there's either people are rooting her on and like you're letting them in on what you're trying to do, but there's also been this idea of you connect with people, you reach out. If someone reaches out to you, you're able to get back to them. And I think like I can even just call myself out for this, is that I'm somebody who loves to dive into the knowledge and try the things and do the things, and I at times will find myself like I enjoy spending time with myself and doing these things, and then sometimes I'll be like, oh, I really, my Geminis are going screaming like, we haven't talked to anybody today yet, like let's maybe. And
Totally.
it's that sense of like, okay, connection. I would be willing to say is probably the most important thing in business, period. Like if you are trying to build something from the ground up without anyone, and I'm not talking about hiring a coach, I'm not talking about these things. Like that is one avenue, of course. But the idea is like accountability,
Mhm.
sharing it online, being able to like network a little bit. And again, if there's anything that you've heard in here, second degree society is the shit, and you should
Yeah.
absolutely jump in. But the idea with all of this is that like, don't do this alone. Solopreneurship is a freaking myth. It's a lie. And even too, for anyone who's like, I'm going to be a solopreneur for life, like No, like, that's not the goal. We want to be able to walk away from our business, enjoy it. But I think that one, like, gamify
Mhm.
this, allow yourself to connect and lean on the support of others in whatever form that takes. But also to, like, don't decide to pigeonhole yourself. And I think based off of what you were sharing, people might call that niching, like where like you only do this one thing. And I've never been that. And it's going like you can have a focus
Totally.
without making it your whole identity. So like being able to be open to where money can come from you in multiple ways.
And you sum that up beautifully. And I think that the reality is we're all multi-passionate humans. So yes, I think if you're a coach or if you're creating an offer, you don't want to have like a bajillion offers being advertised to confuse your people, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't create offers down the line. So like when you're starting out, it's not shameful if you have a side hustle for your business. Like if there's something that supports your business. My sister, I bless her, like she has Airbnb'd her house. She has a very great lucrative financial job that she works at. And she has done Airbnb. She bought a van and rented that out. She did Rover. Like there's no shame in creating multiple revenue streams for wealth and bringing in money. Also because there's some months that are like the Sahara Desert, and then there's some months that feel so abundant, and you need to account for all of those months.
I love that. I love that. As per usual, I would love to take all of your day and ask all the questions and keep chatting. But let me ask the question. If you remember from the first time you were on Limitless, I'm going to ask it again. What does being limitless mean to you?
Mm. Last week I was at Alt Summit and they had a sign that said smash blank. And I put the glass ceiling because that's what it felt like to me. Because there's glass ceilings from society, but I think there's also glass ceilings from ourselves
Oh,
where
absolutely.
where you're like, oh, I'm just at this where I'm supposed to be, but I'm 8K short of it. It's like, why are we our own worst enemies? So I think being limitless is the idea of getting over your own shit and allowing yourself to be happy for your friend who gets a client, be happy for someone when they get a raise or promotion, because you know that you are so capable of getting that client. There's enough money for you out there, there's enough clients for you out there, and living that mentality, even on the days when it feels brutal.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Amazing. I love that. Emily, thank you so much for sharing more of your journey. Of course, it's a absolute pleasure. Where can we stay connected with you?
Ooh, check me out on my personal Instagram. I love talking to peeps there. It's Emily A. Merrell, Merrell, like the shoes, or Second Degree Society, all spelled out on Instagram. And DM me if you want to check out a virtual event as my guest. I'm happy to send you a code.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the therapy session. I appreciate it.
As per usual, gotcha.